I'm Brianna, 23 years old. For 23 years, I lived as a servant in my own home. I woke at 5 every morning to scrub floors, cook meals, and wash clothes while my brother Brandon slept until noon in his king-sized bed. My parents told me something I believed for over 2 decades. Some children are born to be served. Some are born to serve. You're the second kind. I never questioned it. Not until the bride's father, a man I'd never met, looked at my face during the family photo and started trembling. He pulled me aside and asked a question that shattered everything I thought I knew. Do you know who your real mother is? Before I continue, if this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear what happened next. And if you're watching, drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to the morning of Brandon's wedding, the day I thought would be the worst of my life. We lived in a 2-story colonial in Fairfield County, Connecticut, the kind of neighborhood where every lawn was manicured and every family drove European cars. Our neighbors were surgeons, attorneys, partners at hedge funds. From the outside, the Patterson household looked like the American dream. From the inside, it was my nightmare. My bedroom wasn't a bedroom. It was the basement, a concrete floor, no windows, a thin mattress that smelled like mildew. The furnace hummed 3 feet from my head. In winter, it was the only warmth I had. In summer, it was suffocating. Every morning at 5, my alarm would ring. By 5:15, I'd be upstairs in the kitchen, scrubbing the granite countertops, preheating the Viking stove, pulling eggs and bacon from the Sub-Zero refrigerator. The kitchen island was Italian marble, Calicotta, Donna once bragged to her book club. I knew every vein in that stone because I polished it daily. Gerald would come down around 7, his Wall Street Journal tucked under his arm, his Tag Heuer glinting on his wrist. He'd settle into his leather armchair in the breakfast nook, never once looking at me. "Is it done?" he'd ask without lifting his eyes from the headlines. "Yes, Mr. Patterson." "The coffee's weak today. Make it stronger tomorrow." That was the extent of our conversations. 23 years of monosyllables and commands. I'd set his plate on the table, the good china, the Wedgwood with the silver rim, and retreat to the kitchen. My place was never at that table. My place was beside the sink, eating whatever scraps were left after the family finished. But the thing that hurt most wasn't the cold basement or the endless chores. It was the way they referred to me. Brandon's room was on the second floor, corner unit, with bay windows overlooking the garden. He had a 65-inch Samsung mounted on the wall, a PlayStation 5, and a walk-in closet bigger than my entire basement. He went to St. Thomas Academy, $45,000 a year, lacrosse team, college prep. I stayed home. Homeschooled, Gerald told the neighbors whenever they asked. The truth was simpler. No one taught me anything. I learned to read from old magazines Donna threw away. I learned math by counting change at the grocery store. When Brandon turned 18, Gerald handed him the keys to a white BMW 3 Series. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have a single form of identification. "Your documents got lost in a fire," Donna told me once when I was 12 and asked why I couldn't enroll in the local middle school. "It's too complicated to replace them. You're better off here with us." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. Brandon had an American Express Platinum card linked to Gerald's account. No limit. He bought sneakers that cost more than I'd touched in my entire life. I owned 3 dresses, all hand-me-downs from Donna, altered to fit my smaller frame. At dinner, the family sat together. Brandon would talk about his classes, his friends, his weekend plans. Gerald would nod approvingly. Donna would smile and refill his glass. I stood in the kitchen doorway, waiting to clear the plates. Once, when I was 14, I asked Donna why I couldn't sit with them. She laughed like I'd told a joke. "Brianna, honey, the table only seats 3. It seated 6. I'd counted. That night, I realized something I'd never admitted to myself. I wasn't part of this family. I never had been. Gerald called them the family rules. He'd written them on an index card when I was 5 and taped it to the inside of my basement door, the only decoration I was allowed. Rule 1, you do not sit at the family table. Rule 2, you do not call us Mom or Dad. You will address us as Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Patterson. Rule 3. You do not leave the house without permission. Rule 4. You do not speak to strangers. The consequences for breaking these rules lived in the kitchen pantry. A thin rattan cane, the kind you'd use on furniture, hidden behind the cereal boxes. Gerald only had to use it twice before I understood. The first time, I was 7. I'd called Donna Mommy in front of her sister. The welts on my palms lasted 2 weeks. The second time, I was 16. I'd saved grocery change for months, $17.32, and walked to the bus station 3 miles away. I was going to leave. I was going to find someone who could help me. The police brought me back within 2 hours. She doesn't have any ID, they told Gerald at the door. No identification whatsoever. Is she yours? Gerald smiled, the warm, concerned smile of a loving father. She's our daughter. Troubled girl, mental health issues. Thank you so much for bringing her home, officers. They left. Gerald locked the door. I spent 3 days in the basement without food. When he finally let me out, he leaned close and whispered, "Without papers, you don't exist. And if you don't exist, no one will ever believe you. No one will ever help you. Do you understand?" I understood. For 7 more years, I never tried to leave again. Brandon wasn't cruel the way Gerald was cruel. He didn't hit me. He didn't lock me in basements or starve me for days. He simply didn't see me. To Brandon, I was furniture, functional, forgettable, there when needed. "Brianna, coffee. Brianna, my room's messy. Brianna, I need the car washed before my date." When his friends came over, he'd introduce me with a wave of his hand. "That's our housekeeper." Not sister, not family. Housekeeper. No one ever questioned it. I looked nothing like the Pattersons. They all had brown eyes and sandy hair. My eyes were green, almost emerald in certain light, and my hair was dark chestnut. I'd asked about it once, years ago. Donna slapped me and told me to stop asking stupid questions. At 26, Brandon was handsome, confident, and employed at one of the biggest real estate firms in Connecticut. He hadn't earned the job. His fiancé's father had arranged it. Victoria Whitmore, blonde, poised, daughter of Richard Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Properties, worth $47 million. Brandon had proposed to her 3 months ago at Pear Se in Manhattan, with a 2-carat diamond ring he'd charged to Gerald's card. The Pattersons were ecstatic. This marriage wasn't just love, it was a ladder. I overheard Gerald talking to Donna the night of the engagement. "This is it. This is how we get into their circle. Richard Whitmore could change everything for us." They didn't know that Richard Whitmore would change everything, all right. Just not the way they expected. The woman Brandon was marrying would become instrumental in destroying the life the Pattersons had built. Not because of her, because of her father. I was 15 when I finally asked the question I'd been holding inside for years. Donna was in the living room, flipping through a Pottery Barn catalog, marking pages with Post-its. I'd just finished mopping the floors and my hands were raw from the bleach. "Mrs. Patterson?" She didn't look up. "What? Why am I different from Brandon?" The catalog lowered. Her eyes, cold, flat, the color of dishwater, met mine. "Different how? Why does he get to go to school? Why does he sit at the table? Why do I have to?" "Because." She cut me off, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Some children are born to be loved. Some children are born to help others. You're the second kind, Brianna. That's your purpose. That's your fate." She returned to her catalog. The conversation was over. I went back to the basement that night and stared at my reflection in the small, cracked mirror above the utility sink, the only mirror I was allowed. My eyes were nothing like theirs. My face was nothing like theirs. But I didn't question it anymore. Donna was right, I told myself. Some people are born to serve. I was one of them. Fighting it would only bring more pain. For 8 more years I believed that. I woke at 5, I scrubbed and cooked and cleaned, and I told myself this was my life. This was what I deserved. Then came Brandon's wedding. And the man who looked at my face and saw someone else entirely. I didn't know it yet, but in 24 hours every lie I'd been told would begin to unravel. The wedding announcement came 6 months before the ceremony. Brandon and Victoria would marry at the Ritz-Carlton in White Plains, 200 guests, a live orchestra, a 5-tier cake from a bakery in Manhattan. Total cost, $200,000, generously covered by Richard Whitmore. Gerald practically floated through the house for weeks. "This is the biggest day of our lives," he kept saying. "The Whitmores are old money, Connecticut aristocracy. We need to make an impression." Donna threw herself into planning. She coordinated with Victoria's mother on flowers, catering, the rehearsal dinner. She bought a new dress, Oscar de la Renta, champagne-colored, $4,000. I assumed I'd be a bridesmaid. I'd spent 6 months helping prepare, addressing invitations, organizing RSVPs, picking up dry cleaning. I'd even practiced walking in heels, imagining myself in a lavender gown, standing beside the altar. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Donna sat me down in the kitchen. "We need to discuss your role," she said. My heart lifted. "Am I walking with the bridesmaids?" She laughed, not kindly. "No, Brianna, you'll be helping with service, passing out champagne, making sure guests have what they need." The words hit me like ice water. "You want me to work the wedding?" "It's not working, it's helping." Her smile was thin and practiced. "You know how you are, sweetheart. Clumsy, awkward. If you stood up there in front of the Whitmores, they'd wonder what's wrong with you. Is that what you want? To embarrass Brandon on his special day?" I shook my head slowly, the familiar numbness settling in. Later that night, the wedding invitations arrived from the printer. Embossed gold lettering, 600-gram cotton paper. I searched through every card. My name wasn't on the family list. It wasn't anywhere at all. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Greenwich Country Club. White tablecloths, crystal stemware, champagne that cost more per bottle than I'd seen in a year. The Whitmores had reserved the entire terrace overlooking the golf course. I wore black, simple dress, white apron. Donna had selected the outfit herself. "You look professional," she'd said, adjusting my collar. "Remember, smile, don't speak unless spoken to, and stay invisible." I carried a silver tray of champagne flutes through the crowd. Whitmore cousins, business associates, old money families whose names I recognized from the society pages Donna left lying around. No one looked at me. I was part of the scenery. Until Victoria noticed. She approached me near the bar, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, her engagement ring catching the sunset light. "You're Brandon's sister, right? Brianna?" I nearly dropped my tray. "Yes, ma'am." "Why aren't you sitting with the family?" Before I could answer, Donna materialized at my elbow, her laugh high and bright. "Brianna prefers to help out. She's shy, always has been, happier in the background." She patted my arm with the affection of a woman posing for cameras. Victoria's brow creased, but she nodded politely and drifted back to her fiancé. I resumed my rounds. That's when I noticed him, Richard Whitmore, Victoria's father, standing near the railing with a glass of scotch, watching me, not glancing. Watching. His face had gone pale, his jaw tight. He approached slowly. "Excuse me, what's your name?" "Brianna, sir." "Brianna." He said it like he was testing the sound. Do you happen to know who your birth mother is?" The question made no sense. "I'm sorry?" He stared at me for a long moment, then excused himself abruptly and walked toward the parking lot, phone already pressed to his ear. Donna watched him go, her smile frozen, her knuckles white around her champagne glass. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my basement. Upstairs I could hear laughter, Donna toasting with her sisters, Brandon's college friends clinking bottles in the living room. The house thrummed with celebration. Down here, there was only the hum of the furnace and the drip of a leaky pipe. I held the black uniform I'd wear tomorrow, pressing out the wrinkles with my hands since I wasn't allowed to use the iron after 9 p.m. Beside me lay the white apron, starched and spotless. On my lap was a photograph, the only one I had of myself with the family. I was 5 in the picture, standing at the edge of the frame while Gerald, Donna, and toddler Brandon posed together by the Christmas tree. They were touching. I was alone. In 23 years of living in this house, I didn't have a single photo where I stood beside my parents. Not one. Why? The question had whispered to me my whole life, but I'd always pushed it down. Asking led to pain. Curiosity led to punishment. But tonight, in the darkness, the question wouldn't stay buried. Why didn't I look like them? Why did they treat me like a stranger? Why had they kept me hidden for so long? I thought about Richard Whitmore's face at the rehearsal dinner. the way he'd gone pale, the tremor in his voice when he asked about my mother. He'd looked at me like he knew me, like he'd been looking for me. But that was ridiculous. No one had ever looked for me. No one had ever wanted me. Tomorrow I would serve champagne at my brother's wedding, while my family pretended I didn't exist. Then life would go on, exactly as it always had. At least, that's what I believed. I had no idea what was coming. I woke at 4 a.m. on the morning of Brandon's wedding. The house was silent. I crept upstairs and started breakfast. Eggs Benedict, fresh squeezed orange juice, the spread Gerald expected before any major event. By 6, I had the dining room set with the good china. Then I moved to the guest room where Victoria's wedding dress hung in its garment bag. Vera Wang. $12,000. Hand-beaded bodice with a cathedral train. Donna had insisted on storing it at our house, claiming our closets had better humidity control than the Whitmore estate. The real reason, I suspected, was so she could show it to her friends. I steamed the fabric carefully, terrified of leaving a single crease. My hands trembled. If I damaged this dress, I didn't want to imagine what Gerald would do. Footsteps behind me. Donna appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a La Perla silk robe, her hair in rollers. "Don't touch the beading," she said. "That's imported crystal, worth more than you." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." She watched me work, arms crossed. "When we arrive at the hotel, you'll enter through the service entrance. Don't let anyone see you going in." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." "And don't embarrass us." Her voice dropped, sharp and cold. "This is the most important day of Brandon's life. If you do anything to ruin it, I will make you regret it." Gerald's voice boomed from downstairs. "Brianna, where's my coffee?" Donna smirked and left. I stood there, holding the steamer, staring at the wedding dress I wasn't allowed to touch, and the life I wasn't allowed to live. Something shifted inside me, small but irreversible. This would be the last time. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I was done. Enough. The Ritz-Carlton Grand Ballroom looked like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers dripped from 30-foot ceilings. White roses cascaded from every surface: the altar, the centerpieces, the sweeping archways. 200 gilded chairs faced a platform where Brandon would soon stand and promise forever to a woman whose family fortune could buy our entire neighborhood. I entered through the loading dock. The catering manager handed me a silver tray and pointed toward the ballroom. "Champagne service. Keep moving, keep smiling, don't engage in conversation." I nodded and took my position. Guests streamed in. Women in designer gowns, men in bespoke suits, diamonds glittering under the chandeliers. I wove between them, offering flutes of Veuve Clicquot, my eyes fixed on the floor. A woman in Chanel stopped me. "Excuse me, are you with the hotel?" "Yes, ma'am." The lie came easily. Gerald passed by without a glance. Donna paused just long enough to whisper, "Your posture is terrible. Stand up straight." Then Brandon appeared with his groomsmen, laughing, adjusting his Tom Ford cufflinks. He saw me and waved me over. "Brianna, hey, make sure there's extra shrimp at my table. You know how Dad gets." "Of course." He turned back to his friends. One of them, a former lacrosse teammate, squinted at me. "Who's that?" "Housekeeper," Brandon said. "She's worked for us forever." The words sliced through me. Housekeeper, not sister, not family. But I didn't react. I'd learned long ago that reactions led to punishment. I returned to circulating, offering champagne to people who looked through me like glass. Then I felt it, someone watching. I turned. Across the ballroom, Richard Whitmore stood alone, his champagne untouched, his eyes locked on my face. He wasn't just watching this time. He was studying me. The ceremony began at 4 o'clock. A string quartet played Pachelbel's Canon as Victoria floated down the aisle in her Vera Wang gown, the train trailing 15 feet behind her. Brandon waited at the altar, beaming, his hands clasped in front of him. Gerald and Donna sat in the front row, dabbing their eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. I stood at the back of the ballroom, tray in hand, watching my family from 50 feet away. The officiant spoke about love, commitment, the sacred bond of marriage. Brandon's voice cracked when he said his vows. Victoria's eyes glistened as she slipped the Tiffany band onto his finger. They kissed. The room erupted in applause, and I stood there, invisible, holding champagne I wasn't allowed to drink. For a moment, I let myself imagine a different life. One where I sat in that front row beside Donna, one where I wore a lavender dress and held a bouquet of roses, one where Brandon introduced me to his bride as my sister Brianna, instead of our housekeeper. But that life didn't exist. Maybe it never had. The crowd rose for the recessional. Brandon and Victoria swept down the aisle, arm in arm, showered with rose petals. As they passed, Donna caught my eye. Her expression wasn't warm. It wasn't proud. It was a warning. Don't forget your place. I lowered my gaze. Somewhere in the crowd, I felt that watching presence again. Richard Whitmore, standing near the back, hadn't clapped once. He hadn't taken his eyes off me for the entire ceremony. I didn't understand why, but a strange feeling crept through my chest, something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. And I didn't know what to do with it. If you've made it this far, I think you understand why I'm telling this story. You might know what it feels like to stand inside your own family and still be treated like an outsider. To serve people who refuse to acknowledge you exist. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to serve someone who wouldn't even admit you were part of their family? If you have, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment. Let me know I'm not alone. And if this story is hitting close to home, please like and subscribe, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about myself. I'll be right back. The reception began with champagne toasts and a 12-piece jazz band. I worked the Whitmore family table, refilling water glasses, clearing appetizer plates. Victoria's mother smiled politely at me. Her aunts and uncles chatted amongst themselves about summer homes in the Hamptons. Richard Whitmore sat at the head of the table, barely touching his food. Every time I approached, I felt his gaze. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, not predatory or cold. It was something else, something I couldn't name. When I reached to clear his salad plate, his hand shot out and caught my wrist, gently but firmly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. "I need to ask you something." "Of course, sir." "Your name is Brianna?" "Yes." "Brianna Patterson?" "Yes, sir." He released my wrist. His hand was trembling. "Do you know who your mother is? Your real mother?" The question again, the same one from the rehearsal dinner. "I live with Mr. and Mrs. Patterson," I said carefully. "They've raised me since I was a baby." Richard's face changed. Something broke behind his eyes, grief, or maybe recognition. "Excuse me," he whispered, and stood abruptly from the table. I watched him walk toward the terrace doors, pulling out his phone. Through the glass, I could see him pacing, speaking intensely to someone on the other end. Victoria noticed. "Is my dad okay?" I didn't know how to answer. At the family table, Donna was watching the scene unfold. Her champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. She leaned toward Gerald and whispered something. He turned, found me with his eyes, and his expression hardened into something I recognized. Fear. I'd never seen Gerald Patterson afraid of anything. Until now. The photographer clapped his hands and called for the family portraits. "Bride and groom's families, please gather by the floral arch." The Whitmores assembled first. Richard, his wife Eleanor, Victoria's brother and his wife, a cluster of elegant relatives in coordinated pastels. Then the Pattersons. Gerald straightened his tie. Donna smoothed her Oscar de la Renta. Brandon wrapped an arm around Victoria's waist. I stayed back, tray in hand. The photographer scanned the group, then pointed at me. "What about her? Is she family?" Silence. Gerald's smile tightened. Donna looked at the floor. Brandon said nothing. Then Richard Whitmore's voice cut through the awkward pause. "Yes, she's family. Brianna, please come stand beside me." I froze. "Sir?" "You heard me." His voice was calm but firm. "Come here." I set down my tray. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I walked toward the group. Gerald's face flushed red. He couldn't object, not to Richard Whitmore, not the man paying for this entire wedding, but I could see his jaw working, the fury barely contained. Richard placed his hand on my shoulder. His palm was warm, steadying. "Right here," he said softly. "This is where you belong." The photographer adjusted his lens. Everyone ready? Big smiles. The flash fired. Richard kept me close as the photographer showed him the preview on the camera's screen. I watched his face as he zoomed in on the image, specifically on me. His eyes went wet. Those eyes, he murmured, almost to himself. That chin. My God. He pulled out his phone again and walked away, dialing. I heard only fragments. It's her, I'm certain. Get the file, the FBI cold case from 2003, and prepare a DNA kit, tonight. My heart stopped. What had he just said? The moment the photographer moved on, Gerald's hand clamped around my arm. Outside, now. He pulled me through a service corridor, past the kitchen, into a narrow hallway where crates of champagne were stacked against the wall. The noise of the reception faded to a distant hum. What did you tell him? Gerald's face was inches from mine, his breath hot with whiskey. Nothing. I swear I didn't. Don't lie to me. His grip tightened until I winced. Why was Whitmore asking about your mother? I don't know. He just asked, and I said I lived with you. Gerald shoved me against the wall. The crates rattled. Listen to me carefully. His voice dropped to a hiss. If you say anything, to anyone about our family, I will throw you out on the street. No money, no clothes, nothing. You'll be homeless within a week. Do you understand? Donna appeared at the end of the hallway, her heels clicking against the concrete. What's happening? Whitmore keeps asking questions about her. Gerald jerked his head toward me. Something's wrong. Donna's eyes narrowed. She approached slowly, her champagne-colored gown swishing against the floor. Brianna, her voice was ice. After the reception, you're staying to clean. You don't speak to anyone, and whatever Mr. Whitmore wants to discuss, you tell him nothing. We are your family. We saved you. Without us, you'd be dead in a gutter somewhere. She smiled, that practiced public smile. Now get back to work, and if you embarrass us again, I promise you'll regret it. They left me there, shaking, alone among the champagne crates. Gerald's words echoed in my head. Without papers, you don't exist. But Richard Whitmore thought I did exist. He thought I was someone. The question was, who? I returned to the reception floor in a daze. The jazz band had started, and couples swayed on the dance floor, Brandon and Victoria in the center, their foreheads touching, the picture of newlywed bliss. Gerald and Donna sat at the family table, laughing with guests, performing their roles as devoted parents. I picked up my tray and resumed circulating, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Gerald was right. Without documents, without proof of identity, I was no one. If I tried to leave, I'd be picked up by police within days, a vagrant with no name, no history, no one to claim her. This was my life. It always had been. It always would be. I drifted toward the ballroom's edge, toward the exit. Maybe I could just slip away, disappear into the night, walk until my legs gave out and let whatever happened next happen. What difference did it make? No one would miss me. No one would even notice I was gone. Brianna. I turned. Richard Whitmore stood behind me, his face etched with something I didn't recognize. Concern? Grief? May I speak with you privately? Just for a moment. I glanced toward the family table. Donna was watching us, her smile frozen. I don't think I should, please. His voice cracked. It's important. I've been looking for someone for a very long time. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was old, faded, soft at the edges, like it had been handled countless times over many years. A young woman holding an infant, dark chestnut hair, green eyes exactly like mine. Do you recognize anyone in this picture? Richard asked quietly. My throat closed. I don't know who that is. But something deep inside me stirred, something that felt like remembering. Richard led me to the terrace overlooking the hotel gardens. The night air was cool. Inside, the reception continued. Clinking glasses, bursts of laughter, the band launching into a Sinatra standard. Out here, there was only the distant hum of traffic and the hammering of my own heart. Richard held the photograph toward me again. In the soft light from the ballroom, I could see it more clearly now. The woman was young, mid-20s maybe, with a tired but radiant smile. The baby in her arms was wrapped in a pink blanket, eyes closed, impossibly small. This is my sister Margaret, Richard said. And the baby is her daughter, Brianna Ashford Whitmore. I stared at him. I don't understand. 23 years ago, Margaret's baby was taken from Stanford Hospital, kidnapped from the nursery in the middle of the night. His voice wavered. My sister spent 5 years looking for her. She hired investigators, worked with the FBI, never stopped believing her daughter was alive. He swallowed hard. She died when the baby would have been 5. Heart failure, but the doctors said it was grief. She simply gave up. I'm so sorry. My voice came out as a whisper. But I don't see what this has to do with me. Richard turned to face me fully. Brianna. The baby's name was Brianna. She had green eyes, rare in our family, but Margaret had them too. He gestured toward my face. That nose, that chin, the shape of your mouth, it's identical. I took a step back. Mr. Whitmore, I think you're confused. I've been searching for 23 years. Tears streamed down his cheeks. And when I saw you at the rehearsal dinner, I knew. He reached into his other pocket and withdrew a small plastic container. Please, let me take a DNA sample. If I'm wrong, I'll never bother you again. But if I'm right, he steadied himself. If I'm right, then the people in that ballroom are not your family. They're the people who stole you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Stole you. For 23 years, I'd been told I was worthless. Born to serve. Lucky to have a roof over my head. And now this man, this stranger, was telling me I might have been stolen. That the people who raised me might be criminals. That I might have a family who actually wanted me. It was too much. Too impossible. I can't, I said, backing away. I can't do this. Brianna, please. Richard's voice was gentle but urgent. I have a lab on standby. ABB certified, the gold standard for DNA testing. Results in 72 hours. Even if the test matches, if it matches, you're Margaret's daughter. You're my niece. He swallowed. And you're the legal heir to the trust she established before she died. I stopped. What trust? Margaret never gave up hope that her daughter would be found. She set up a trust fund in your name, in Brianna Ashford Whitmore's name, to be released if you were ever recovered. It's been growing for 23 years. How much? Richard met my eyes. $12 million? The terrace tilted beneath me. But this isn't about money, he said quickly. It's about the truth. It's about justice. And it's about giving my sister peace, finally knowing what happened to her child. Inside, the band shifted to a slow ballad. I could see Donna through the glass doors, scanning the room, looking for me. Looking for her property. I thought about the basement, the rules, the cane in the pantry. 23 years of being told I was nothing. And then I thought about Margaret Whitmore, dying of grief, never knowing what happened to her baby girl. I met Richard's eyes. What do I need to do? He opened the DNA kit. Just open your mouth. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I went back to my routine, waking at 5, scrubbing, cooking, cleaning. But everything felt different now. Every time Gerald barked an order, I looked at his face and wondered, did you buy me? Every time Donna criticized my work, I heard Richard's voice. The people who stole you. They noticed the change. What's wrong with you? Donna demanded on the second morning. I'd let the coffee sit too long, and it had turned bitter. Nothing, Mrs. Patterson. I'm just tired. You're always tired. She poured the coffee down the sink. Make another pot, and this time, pay attention. I made another pot. I washed the dishes. I folded the laundry. But in my pocket, I carried the slip of paper Richard had given me, his personal cell phone number, written in blue ink. Brandon and Victoria had left for their honeymoon in Bali. The house felt quieter without him, but no less oppressive. On the third night, I lay awake in the basement, staring at the concrete ceiling, counting the hours. Then my phone buzzed. The old Nokia, the only device I owned, purchased with saved grocery change, glowed with a text message from an unknown number. Results are in. Can you meet tomorrow? 10 a.m. Cafe on Main Street. R.W. My heart stopped, then started again, racing. I typed back, I'll be there. The next morning, I told Donna I needed to buy cleaning supplies. She barely looked up from her magazine. "Be back by noon. I have guests coming for lunch." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." I walked out the door and kept walking. Toward the truth. Toward the answer to every question I'd been too afraid to ask. The cafe was a small place on Main Street. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, the smell of fresh espresso. Richard was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table with a manila envelope in front of him. His eyes were red like he hadn't slept. "Brianna." He stood as I approached. "Thank you for coming." "What do the results say?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid the envelope across the table. I opened it with trembling fingers. The document inside was covered in numbers and technical language, alleles, loci, probability calculations, but one section was highlighted in yellow: combined paternity index, 99.97%. Conclusion: the tested individual, Brianna Patterson, is the biological daughter of Margaret Eleanor Whitmore, deceased. I read it 3 times, 4 times. The words didn't change. "You're my niece," Richard said softly. "You're Margaret's daughter. You're Brianna Ashford Whitmore." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. "This is real?" "It's real. I've already contacted the FBI. The cold case from 2003 is being reopened." He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. "Gerald and Donna Patterson will be investigated. If they acquired you through illegal means, if they purchased you from traffickers, they'll be prosecuted." Prosecuted. The word tasted foreign. Federal charges, human trafficking, document fraud, child endangerment. Richard's voice hardened. They could face 15 to 20 years. I sat back in my chair, the DNA report clutched against my chest. 23 years. 23 years of basements and beatings and being told I was born to serve. And none of it was true. I wasn't worthless. I wasn't unwanted. I had a family, a real family. A mother who had loved me so much she died of grief when she lost me. And now, finally, the truth was coming to light. I want to pause here for a moment, because this is where everything changed. For 23 years I believed I was nothing, that I deserved nothing. And in 72 hours, a DNA test destroyed that lie completely. But now I had a choice to make. I could walk away quietly, start over somewhere new and never look back. Or I could let the truth come out, let Gerald and Donna face what they'd done. What would you do? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. And if you're still with me, hit subscribe, because the final confrontation is coming, and it's going to change everything. 1 week later, the trap was set. Richard had invited the Patterson family to his estate in Greenwich, a 12-bedroom mansion on 5 acres, with stone gates and a circular driveway lined with topiaries. The official reason was discussing business opportunities for Brandon. Gerald had been ecstatic when the invitation arrived. "This is it," he'd crowed at dinner. "Richard Whitmore wants to bring me into his inner circle." I knew this marriage would pay off. Donna had spent 3 days selecting her outfit. A pale blue Armani pantsuit, pearl earrings, her hair freshly highlighted. Brandon and Victoria were flying back early from Bali specifically for the meeting. No one suspected anything. I was instructed to come along, of course. "To help serve refreshments," Donna said, as though it were obvious. I didn't argue. When we pulled up to the Whitmore estate, Gerald let out a low whistle. "This must be worth 30 million, easy." "More," Donna murmured, her eyes gleaming. We were ushered into the main sitting room, a cavernous space with 20-foot ceilings, oil paintings in gilded frames, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Richard greeted us warmly, shaking Gerald's hand, kissing Donna's cheek. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. Brandon and Victoria should be here any moment." I hung back near the doorway, watching. Gerald didn't notice the other people in the house, the man in the gray suit waiting in the adjacent room, the woman with the manila folder on her lap. But I did. Richard caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. The FBI agents were in position. The evidence was ready. And Gerald and Donna Patterson had walked straight into the reckoning they'd spent 23 years avoiding. A housekeeper brought in a mice and tea service, bone china worth more than the Patterson family car. Donna accepted her cup with exaggerated graciousness, crossing her legs at the ankle like she'd seen in old movies. This is a beautiful home, Richard, she said. Just stunning. Thank you. Richard settled into his armchair, his expression pleasant but unreadable. I wanted to discuss something with you before Brandon arrives, something about Brianna. Gerald's cup rattled against its saucer. Brianna? Yes. Richard gestured toward where I stood near the doorway. She's been part of your family for quite some time, hasn't she? Since she was a baby, Donna said quickly. We adopted her when she was just a few months old. Gave her everything, a home, food, education. We've been very good to her. Adopted. Richard nodded slowly. That's interesting, because I had my attorneys check the county records. There's no adoption paperwork on file for anyone named Brianna Patterson. Silence. Gerald set down his teacup. The records must be incomplete. You know how government agencies are. Things get lost. I also checked with the state of Connecticut, Richard continued, his voice still calm. No birth certificate, no social security number issued at birth, no hospital records anywhere in the tri-state area. Donna's practiced smile was starting to crack. What exactly are you implying, Richard? I'm implying that Brianna has no legal identity, no documentation whatsoever. He leaned forward. Which raises a very interesting question. Where did she come from? Gerald stood abruptly. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I don't appreciate the accusation. Richard didn't flinch. It's not an accusation, Gerald. Not yet. He opened the leather portfolio on the table beside him. But I think you should see what's in this folder. Richard removed 2 documents from the portfolio and laid them on the coffee table. The first was the DNA report, the one I'd already seen, with its highlighted conclusion and its 99.97% certainty. The second was older, a photocopied FBI report with a case number at the top and the word confidential stamped in red. This, Richard said, pointing to the DNA report, confirms that Brianna is a 99.97% genetic match to my late sister, Margaret Whitmore. Brianna is her biological daughter. Gerald's face went from red to white. And this, Richard tapped the FBI document, is the cold case file from March 2003. My niece, Brianna Ashford Whitmore, was abducted from Stanford Hospital when she was 6 months old. She was never found. He looked up at Gerald. Until now. Donna's teacup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the Persian rug. This is insane, Gerald sputtered. We would never… Then explain the documents. Richard's voice hardened. Explain why she has no birth certificate, no adoption records, no proof that she was ever legally your child. There was a fire, Donna's voice pitched high. Records were lost. There was no fire, Richard cut her off. I checked. Every hospital in a 300-mile radius. No fire, no lost records, no Brianna born to any family named Patterson. The door to the adjacent room opened. A man in a gray suit stepped through, followed by a woman holding a badge. Gerald Patterson? Donna Patterson? The man's voice was flat, official. I'm Special Agent Morrison with the FBI. We have some questions about the acquisition of your daughter. Gerald stumbled backward, his face ashen. Donna began to cry. And I stood there, watching the walls finally close in on the people who had called themselves my parents. What happened next moved quickly. Special Agent Morrison produced a warrant. His partner, Agent Chen, now Agent Smith, I'd later learn she'd recently married, began reading the Miranda rights. Gerald Patterson, Donna Patterson, you are under arrest for suspicion of human trafficking, document fraud, and child endangerment. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Gerald tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Agent Morrison caught his arm and pinned him against the wall. The man who had terrorized me for 23 years, who had starved me, beaten me, told me I was nothing, whimpered like a child as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Donna collapsed onto the sofa, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Brianna, she wailed. Brianna, please, tell them this is a mistake. We're your family. We raised you. I looked at her, at the woman who had slapped me for asking questions, who had locked me in basements, who had told me I was born to serve. You raised me as a servant, I said. My voice was calm, steady. You never treated me like family. Not once. We gave you everything. You gave me a mattress on a concrete floor. I took a step closer. You took my identity. You took my childhood. You took my mother from me. Donna's face crumpled. We didn't know. We thought. You knew. Gerald's voice cut through, suddenly vicious, even in handcuffs. You knew exactly what we were doing, Donna. Don't pretend otherwise. At that moment, the front door opened. Brandon and Victoria walked in, fresh from Bali, tanned and smiling, until they saw the FBI agents and their parents in handcuffs. Victoria's smile vanished. What the hell is going on? The federal charges came down within the month. Gerald and Donna Patterson were indicted on 3 counts each: human trafficking under 18 U.S.C., Section 1589, document fraud, and child endangerment. The investigation revealed they had purchased me from an underground adoption network in 2003 for $15,000, cash, untraceable. The network had been shut down years ago, but the FBI had kept records. My name appeared on a ledger, listed between a purchase price and a delivery date, like I was inventory. The trial lasted 4 months. I testified twice. Gerald maintained his innocence until the end, claiming he'd been told I was an orphan, that he'd simply given me a better life. The jury didn't believe him. Donna turned on him during her testimony, claiming she'd been coerced, that Gerald had threatened her, that she'd always wanted to treat me better but couldn't. The jury didn't believe her either. Final sentencing: Gerald received 18 years in federal prison, Donna received 12. Their assets were frozen pending civil proceedings. The house in Fairfield County, the one with the Sub-Zero refrigerator and the Calicotta marble and the basement where I'd slept for 23 years, was seized to cover legal fees and potential restitution. Brandon's world collapsed too. Richard Whitmore withdrew all financial support the day of the arrest. The $200,000 spent on the wedding? Now Brandon's debt. His job at Whitmore Properties? Terminated immediately. Victoria filed for divorce 3 weeks later. I can't do this, I overheard her tell Brandon on the phone. Your parents bought a human being. They trafficked a child. I can't be associated with that. The man who'd grown up as a prince was suddenly alone, unemployed, and drowning in debt. And me? For the first time in my life, I was free. Brandon called me 6 months after the sentencing. I almost didn't answer. The name on the screen, Brandon Patterson, still triggered something cold in my chest, even now. But curiosity won. Hello? Brianna. His voice was thin, unfamiliar, not the confident golden boy I'd grown up serving. Someone hollowed out. I need to talk to you. About what? I'm in trouble. He laughed bitterly. That's an understatement. The apartment's gone. The car's gone. Victoria's lawyer is asking for damages because of the emotional distress of being associated with my family. I can't get a job anywhere. Everyone's seen the news. I waited. I was wondering if maybe you could help me out. Just a loan. Just until I get back on my feet. There it was. 23 years of being treated like furniture, and now he needed something from me. Brandon, I said slowly, in all the years we lived in the same house, did you ever help me? Silence. Did you ever stand up for me when Gerald hit me? Did you ever ask why I slept in the basement? Did you ever once treat me like a sister? I didn't know. You knew. My voice stayed level. You just didn't care. I was convenient. I made your life easier. And now that I'm not there to serve you anymore, you have no idea how to survive. Brianna, please. I'm not going to help you, Brandon. Not because I hate you, but because you need to learn something you never learned growing up. I paused. Actions have consequences, and so does silence. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but my heart was steady. For the first time in my life, I had set a boundary, and I intended to keep it. The inheritance came through 3 months after the trial ended. Richard's lawyers had worked tirelessly to verify my identity and activate the trust Margaret had established in 2003. The process required court orders, FBI confirmation, and stacks of paperwork. But eventually, the final document arrived. Beneficiary: Brianna Ashford Whitmore Trust. Value: $12,847,329.80. $1.16. Status: active. I read the number 7 times before it felt real. Richard drove me to the bank himself on the day the funds were released. We sat in a private office on the top floor, surrounded by mahogany furniture and oil paintings, while a banker explained investment options and tax implications. $12 million, more money than the Pattersons would see in 10 lifetimes. But it wasn't the money that changed me. It was the name. Brianna Ashford Whitmore. My real name. The name my mother had given me before I was stolen. Richard helped me move into a guest suite at the Greenwich estate. I had my own room, with windows overlooking a rose garden, a king-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, and a bathroom bigger than my old basement. The first night, I couldn't sleep. I just walked around touching the walls, running my fingers across the curtains, reminding myself this was real. Richard enrolled me in a college preparation program. My lack of formal education didn't matter. There were resources, tutors, people who specialized in helping survivors of trafficking rebuild their lives. A year later, I received my acceptance letter. Yale University, full scholarship through a program for human trafficking survivors. I held the letter in my hands and cried for an hour. Then I found something else in the estate's archives. A handwritten note from my mother, Margaret, dated 2003. The year I was taken. I visited Gerald and Donna once. It was 8 months after their sentencing. I didn't owe them anything. Richard and my therapist both said I shouldn't go. But I needed closure. I needed to look them in the eye and say what I'd been carrying for 23 years. The federal correctional facility was in northern Pennsylvania, gray concrete, razor wire, fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. Gerald was escorted in first, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. He'd lost weight. His tag heuer was gone, his wrist was bare. Donna came next. No more Oscar de la Renta, no pearls, just prison-issue clothing, and a face that had aged 10 years in 8 months. They sat across from me at a metal table. "You came," Donna whispered. Her eyes welled up. "I prayed you would come." "I'm not here for reconciliation," I said. "I'm here because I have something to say." Gerald glared at me. Even now, broken and imprisoned, that familiar contempt flickered in his eyes. "Then say it." I met his gaze. "For 23 years, you made me believe I was worthless, that I was born to serve, that I should be grateful for scraps." I kept my voice steady. "But you were wrong. I wasn't born to serve. I was stolen, and you knew it." Donna sobbed. "We thought we were saving you. You thought you were getting free labor," I cut her off. "I'm not here for your excuses. I'm here to tell you, I'm done. I'm not carrying your shame anymore. I'm not carrying your cruelty." I stood. "I will never forget what you did to me. But I won't let it define me either." I walked out without looking back, and I never saw them again. I'm writing this from my dorm room at Yale. It's small, much smaller than the suite at Richard's estate, but it's mine. My name is on the door. My books are on the shelves. My acceptance letter is framed above my desk. Some mornings, I still wake up at 5 out of habit, but now, instead of scrubbing floors, I make coffee and read my psychology textbooks. I'm studying to become a therapist, specifically to work with survivors of trafficking and family abuse. I want to help people like me find their way out of the darkness. On my nightstand, next to my alarm clock, I keep 2 things. The first is my new birth certificate, Brianna Ashford Whitmore, born March 3, 2003, at Stanford Hospital, California. Mother, Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. The second is the letter Richard found in Margaret's archives, the one she wrote to me the week I was taken, before she knew I'd been stolen. "My darling Brianna, if you're reading this one day, I want you to know that you were the greatest gift I ever received. From the moment you were born, I knew you were meant for extraordinary things. No matter what happens, no matter where life takes you, remember, you are loved, you are wanted, you are enough." I read it every morning. 23 years, I believed I was nothing, that I was born to serve, that I didn't deserve a seat at the table. Now I know the truth. I was born to be loved. And I'm spending the rest of my life making sure others know they were too. Thank you for staying with Brianna until the end. Many details in Brianna's story have been dramatized to deliver meaningful messages and life lessons. However, Life is full of unexpected twists, and situations like this do happen more often than we'd like to believe. Every year, thousands of missing children cases remain unsolved. Every day, someone out there is treated as less than human by the people who should love them most. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. And if you know someone who needs to hear that they deserve better, share this with them. More stories about strength, truth, and reclaiming your worth are waiting in the description below. Thank you for watching.